Yo, what's up guys? Sean Kober here of the Live Train Perform podcast. Over the next 2 weeks, while I launch this podcast, I'm going to be dropping one episode per day. Then I'm going to drop back to one episode per week. The first episode is an introductory episode explaining who I am, my background, my knowledge, my experience. The second episode is all about goal setting. That's going to be followed up by progress tracking, then building habits, doing the things that you enjoy doing, consistency, restricting temptation, meal preparation, accountability, crap foods, getting started and building momentum, along with hierarchy of value, motivation direction, and your environment. Now, if you go back and listen to each one of those topics again, they are all relevant for optimizing your performance and your everyday life. It's not just to do with health and fitness. Yes, I am a strength and conditioning coach. That is my background, that is my specialization. However, I'm a coach first and foremost, and I need to optimize the other 23 hours of the day so that I can get the most out of my clients for that 1 hour that I'm with them. I will also be answering some of my followers' questions that have posted questions on my Q&A memes, and I'm going to incorporate those answers into the pertinent episodes.
Hey guys, in today's episode I'm going to be answering some of my followers' questions who posted questions on my Q&A memes, and they've also sent me a couple of DMs as well. So this episode's going to be a little bit different. I'll be answering these questions, but I'm going to be tying the answers into some of the topics that we've spoken about in the previous episodes. Let's get started. So the first question comes in from Matthew Mack, who is one of my former sniper brethren in the army. It's a three-part question. The question is, or the message is, hey Cobes, whilst I'm out of the military now, perhaps a few of the guys who are still in would be keen to hear about some of the following. Question 1, how do you recommend planning your training when you expect to do large periods of time away from the gym and proper nutrition? Example, a month in the field on rations. It may be also relevant to other lines of work like fly in, fly out. Would you still attempt to periodize your training, or would you perhaps try and overreach prior to being away? Excellent question. That really depends on who you are and your mindset. This was one of those things that I struggled with the most when we did go out bush. You know, I'd make really good gains in the gym and with training and around footy training and things like that whilst I was on base. But, you know, we'd be on base for 2 months and then you'd be out bush for a month and you'd pretty much lose all your gains. So this was something that we've all gone through, we've all struggled with. So how do I answer this? Well, this is one of those things that goes back to having a look at your values, okay? For example, if you're a soldier and you're going out field and, you know, you're getting work to the bone and you're not getting much or good nutrition, you're eating ration packs and you're not getting much quality sleep, you know, that's probably going to be more important, is to get that quality sleep so you can actually function. If you're outfield and you're kind of in a different role and you've got some time to get some training in, then absolutely getting some form of training in is going to be important. Now, I spoke about this, I think in a previous episode, but I've also done a post on this recently about breaking your training sessions up into little mini sessions where you literally just do like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes of good quality work a couple of times a day. So you can break that up there. So you're not actually hammering yourself into the ground with your training session. That's going to allow you to recover, and then that's going to also allow you to train a little bit harder when you are getting after those sessions. But then the other component of that is breaking those individual training or mini sessions up into different training modalities. So for example, if you're out bush, you know, you're probably going to be fucking carrying heavy packs and shit like that. And you're going to be, you know, hunched over into these, you're basically going to be folded in half. I mean, sometimes when I was carrying a pack, when I was overseas and out bush and things like that, my pack was like 60, 70 kilos carrying all the equipment that I needed to sustain myself. So I would literally be folded in half with my pack trying to walk up fucking mountains, right? It was super difficult. So if your workload is super high, then you're going to be more focused on, prioritizing nutrition and getting in as much food as you can to sustain yourself so you don't start losing a heap of muscle. And you also need to prioritize sleep and recovery so that you can perform. If you're in a more sedentary job, you're sitting in a CP or something like that, then yeah, absolutely break up your days by knocking out some good quality training. But this is also where isometrics come into play. I've actually had an online client who was in the army, and he knew that he was going out bush for a couple of weeks. So what I said to him was, do some isometrics. This is what bodybuilders are really good at. They get on stage and they literally just flex and contract the fuck out of the muscles. Okay, so this is where isometrics are awesome. I actually use isometrics as part of my rehab, prehab, corrective exercise tools. So what we're looking at here is just simply connecting to those muscles. So what I'd recommend is, maybe 3 sets of 20 to 30 second holds, and you might literally just go through the entire body, flex your calves, flex your quads, flex your hamstrings, flex your glutes, flex your the muscles of the back, flex your arms, your chest, your shoulders, etc. Okay, that might just take you 10 minutes, and that's an excellent way of just sending that signal to those muscles, getting them switched on, getting them fired up, and again, really good for corrective exercise and actually connecting the brain to those target muscles. So I'll use them isometrics, or use that tool as some kind of activation exercise before I go into some heavy lifts. In regards to the FIFO work, again, this is one of those things that it comes down to what's important to you. If you enjoy going to the gym and your health and fitness is important, then absolutely get into the gym as soon as you finish work. Don't go to the bar and sit there and drink beer with the boys. But if that's important to you, you want to build those relationships and that rapport, then go and do that. If you're kind of split, even, then maybe go and do 45 minutes in the gym and then 45 minutes at the bar. And that comes down to your priorities and what's most important to you. Now, this is important as well, that your priorities are going to change. You need to work with what's going to work best for you. An example of this is when I recently went away for 6 weeks. Okay, I knew that I wasn't going to be training. I knew that I wasn't going to have access to the gym. I went snowboarding with a couple of mates, and that was a priority for me. We'd go snowboarding, and we'd sit in the onsen afterwards, and we'd have a couple of beers and talk shit and have a good time. And I knew that that was more important to me than training at the time. But I also knew that once I started training again, I was going to get those gains back fairly quickly. So it's important to understand, what's most important to you, where your values are, so then you can start prioritizing your actions to align with those values. Question 2, would you recommend any bang for your buck supplementation to aid in the maintenance of strength and fitness in that environment? Anything that you would consider worth the wait if you had to carry it around? Good question. Kind of difficult to answer. I would say protein, but that's, if you're carrying, a month's worth of protein, then that's going to add up over time. And, like I said, I've literally been folded in half carrying a pack worth of shit. So anything that you take out bush that you need to carry, you need to consider what you're doing for a job and what you're typically going to be carrying, the load that you're going to be under, how much work you're expected to do, etc. A simple one might be some creatine, which kind of fuels the energy systems. Supplementation, to be honest, I would probably just focus on the nutrition side of things and the recovery side of things. I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking protein or anything like that out bush, unless you had access to a dive bag or something else where you could actually store that somewhere. Then absolutely go for that. That protein is going to be, good for bumping up your protein levels throughout the day, getting in some extra calories throughout the day, supporting that process of recovery, etc. And also, minimizing any loss of muscle mass throughout that time. So, again, depends on what you have access to, and if you need to carry that shit around. If you need to carry that stuff, then it's not even worth taking anything out. Just focus on water and the essentials. Question 3, hand in hand with question 2, is there any equipment you would take with you, bands or similar, and would you fit in some sessions in the field where you can, or due to the potential lack or proper rest and nutrition, would you cut it away for that time? Another very good question. I would, and again, it comes back to, your circumstances. I've, been on field exercises where we take all of our, we get allocated 2 dive bags, and then you get down into location, you literally get told to leave your fucking dive bags on the truck and grab out anything that you need to sustain yourself for 2 weeks. And you don't see those dive bags for 2 weeks. So, it depends on the circumstances and how much you're willing to take and potentially get fucked around. But Absolutely. I would take, whenever I go traveling, I think I spoke about this in a recent podcast, but whenever I go traveling, I set up my little mini travel bag. And in that mini travel bag's my travel gym, which is my set of rings. Probably not as practical when in the military. A TRX is probably going to be a better suit. It's a little bit lighter and probably easier to hang it off personnel carriers and trees and things like that. So a TRX or set of rings or some form of suspension trainer. A couple of bands are awesome. I love bands, so they're excellent for creating tension, building muscle. Super light, very versatile, excellent for activation work, excellent for prehab, corrective exercise, etc. Different size bands are going to obviously give you different options. So the more bands you have, the more options you're going to have. I'll also take a lacrosse ball, nice and small. You might even fit a golf ball or a tennis ball wrapped up in tape or something like that to give it a little bit of extra firmness. And a skipping rope, good old skipping rope, good to go anywhere. Now that's the equipment that I would take. Would I fit in sessions again? This is where I'd fit in a couple of little mini sessions throughout the day, depending on what you're doing, what your work is, how active you are throughout the day, your workload, your ability to rest, sleep, recover, rehydrate, focus on nutrition, etc. Due to potential lack of nutrition, proper rest. Yeah, again, if your workload's super high and you're not getting much sleep and you're dehydrated and nutrition's shit, and you're eating ration packs, then I'd probably cut it away for that time. And then, maybe that's when maybe overreaching prior to going field would be a good idea, but I wouldn't do that like literally right up to the day that you went field, because you're going to fuck yourself up and then you're going to be out field and you're not going to be able to, you won't have the ability to recover because you're in a different environment, you're under higher stress, your nutrition shit, your sleep shit, your workload's high, etc. So if you know that you're going out field, for example, I knew that I was going on course for 2 months, my JLC course down in Adelaide, so I knew that I probably wasn't going to get as much training time there. So, for the month leading up to that, then I would, definitely overreach and look at focusing on building everything as much as I could. And once my numbers started dipping and I started feeling tired, sore, fatigued, wasn't recovering as well, then, I gave myself 5 to 7 days off. Then my body started adapting to that, and, that led me into being in good shape and going through my course in pretty good nick, actually. And then once I was on course, it wasn't about gaining, it was more about maintaining what I'd built. The next question comes from MV Suskil from Instagram. Question 1, opinions and pros cons of the ketogenic diet. I'm not going to answer this question in this episode because I do spend a lot of time in an upcoming episode on the nutritional pyramid of importance, discussing different diets and the pros and cons of each of them. Question 2 is how to choose a training style or routine for people without trainers, such as what movements to use, how long should your rest times be, what rep ranges, what weight, etc. Okay. How to choose a training style. So there's something called specific adaptations to impose demands. This means that your body is going to adapt to whatever you do. So we are fucking adaptation machines. Our body is constantly trying to conserve energy. Think about this from an evolutionary perspective. There's not much food available. We need to cover long distances to search for food, water, and shelter. Okay, so our body literally tries to conserve as much energy as possible. So what you do the majority of the time, consistently, your body's going to adapt to. So an example of this is in recent years, archaeologists actually dug up some skeletons, and these were from a couple of 100 years ago, and historians could actually pinpoint what these skeletons, what these people did when they were alive by how their bone structure was formed. So they pinpointed who the archers were because the archers had, like, one side of their body was a lot denser than the other, and they had these kind of rotational torsion of their spine where they'd basically been pulling on their longbows and creating this rotation of the spine and this increasing bone density and muscle mass on one side of the body. One side was pushing, one side was pulling through the upper body. So their bodies started adapting to this. Now, an interesting story here is I'm the head strength and conditioning coach at Tiger Muay Thai, and I was coaching a CrossFit class when the gym was still open. This was probably maybe the start of this year or the end of last year, about 6 months ago. And there was a girl in class that I was just having a look at her technique on. She was doing some lifting, and I was moving around her body to have a look at her recruitment patterns, and I noticed that something was a little bit off. So I started having a closer look at her posture, and I asked her, I was like, do you know that you've got minor scoliosis? And she kind of looked at me and she's like, do I? Yeah, maybe that's why I kind of like feel a little bit wonky. So anyway, I picked up on that and I asked her and I said, like, what do you do for a living? Are you a nanny or something like that? And she looked at me like I was a fucking wizard. And she was like, yeah, I carry children all day. Like, why do you say that? And I could tell because, you know, she had this minor scoliosis and her body had started adapting to what she'd been doing for the most part. Now, this is important to know, and this is why I say this, because your training, if you're training an hour a day, your training should literally complement what you're doing throughout the day, or it should counteract what you're doing throughout the day. So if you spend a lot of time sitting throughout the day, you work on a fucking computer doing 8 to 10 to 12 hours in that position where, you know, your hips are flexed, your shoulders are rolled forward, everything's in front of you, then your body's going to start adapting to that. It's going to start shortening those muscles, your flexors, those muscles that pull you into that rounded position. This is an energy conserving position for us. This is why when you feel sick, when you feel tired, when you feel run down, you end up in the fetal position, okay? Because this conserves energy. Your body doesn't have to expend energy. Now, if you are one of those people who spend a lot of time sitting throughout the day and you do everything in front of you and you become shortened, those muscles become short, tight, round, then what we need to do when we go to the gym is work through our extensors. This is our hip extensors, being our glutes and hamstrings. Then we want to work through, the scapular retractors and pull the shoulder blades down and back and pull that shoulder girdle back into a good position. And also think about tucking the chin and elongating the spine. All right. So if you're one of those people who spends a lot of time sitting throughout the day and then you go to the gym and you do all these movements in front of you, like fucking burpees and box jumps, and squats and things like that, then, you know, it's probably not going to be serving you as well as doing deadlifts and rows and these types of movements that are kind of counteracting these positions that you find yourself in throughout the day. So, pretty dense topic, difficult for me to answer on an individual basis. But what I would say is that you need to train movement, okay? We have these movement patterns, these primal movement patterns that we do every single day. So we have hinge, squat, lunge, push, pull, and twist, okay? I like to throw in carry there as well. All right, so everyone should be doing these movements, but what variation you choose is going to be completely dependent on you as a person. So, for example, if I've had someone or I've got a client who has a fused disc or has issues with their hips or their spine or something like that, you know, I'm probably not going to be heavy back squatting them. I might literally just be choosing some goblet squats or something similar. All right, everyone needs to squat because it's a primal movement pattern, but the variation that I'm going to choose for each individual is going to vary. Now, if I've got someone who's an Olympic lifter, then, you know, I'm probably going to be front squatting them a lot. And I'm probably going to be choosing these squat variations that are going to contribute to either their sport or it's going to complement their life or counteract their daily lifestyle, their daily movements, etc. All right, so everyone should be doing those movements, but choosing the variation that's appropriate for you is most important. So why do we need to train these primal movement patterns? Well, these primal movement patterns are patterns that we use every single day, okay? Every time I bend over to pick something up, this is my hinge pattern. These are all my deadlift variations, okay? Then I've got my squat pattern, which is every time I sit down, I stand back up. That's my squat pattern, so I need to strengthen that. My lunge pattern is anytime I'm climbing stairs, I'm walking, I'm hiking, I'm climbing over things, okay, is my lunge pattern. My push pattern is anytime that I'm placing anything away from my body. Pull pattern is pulling anything towards my body. And my twist is, any kind of rotational movement. And then I throw my carry in there as well. So think about the 70-year-old grandma that goes grocery shopping. She's pushing her trolley along. That is a lunge pattern, okay, and a push at the same time. Then she's grabbing things off the shelf, which is a pull pattern. She's twisting. She's placing it down into the trolley, which is a twist and a push. She pushes that cart to her shopping trolley to her car. She sits down, which is a squat pattern, drives home, then takes all the groceries out of the car, walks to the front door, puts the groceries down, deadlifts or hinges to place those groceries down, pulls a key out of her pocket, unlocks the door, picks everything up, walks back inside. Okay, now she starts unpacking everything, pulling things out, placing things up above her head in the fridge, etc., etc. We're using these patterns all the time, so it makes sense to strengthen these patterns. Now, how to choose a training style, specific adaptation to impose demand. Let's go back to that. If I want to train strength, if I want to get stronger, guess what? I need to train strength. All right. If I want to build power, then I need to train power. If I want to build speed, then I train speed. Endurance, same. Conditioning, same. Now, this is where a lot of people go wrong, is they take strength-based movement and they turn it into conditioning-based movement, okay? I am a CrossFit coach, so please don't think that I'm bagging out CrossFit, but this is one of my pet hates when it comes to CrossFit. Okay, the whole concept of CrossFit is let's take all these awesome training modalities, which they are in their own individual rights, but they throw everything in together, okay? And now you're taking, a deadlift, for example. I look at a deadlift as a fucking awesome strength building exercise. It's excellent for that. But if I'm using that as a conditioning exercise, okay, it's nowhere near as valuable. My conditioning, if that's my focus, I'm probably going to choose some skipping or some running or some, rowing or riding or fucking swimming or something like that, okay? There's going to be a lot more specific for the adaptation that I'm trying to create. Likewise for box jumps, okay? I'm looking at box jumps as power, okay? This is all about rate of force development. How high can I jump? How explosive can I be? How well can I express this strength rapidly? Okay, it's all about, for me, a box jump is when I'm jumping on top of a box, I'm trying to jump as high as I can. I'm trying to move my hips as far as I can. All right, now most people when they do box jumps, they produce enough force to get off the ground, and then they literally just drag their knees to their chest and they're landing their ass on their heels on top of the box, okay, and their fucking hips don't even move, okay. That's all about going for conditioning and time. You've just taken an excellent power exercise and turned it into a shitty conditioning exercise. Same with all the Olympic lifts. Okay, same with pull-ups and things like that. Calisthenics-based movements are excellent for building strength, stability, and tension. But if you're throwing yourself through kipping pull-ups, okay, you've taken an awesome strength-based exercise and turned it into a shitty conditioning exercise. All right, so training style needs to be in line with your goals. Anytime we're looking at different training protocols, the variables are all there for a reason. Okay, this is my exercise selection, my exercise order, my sets, my reps, my rest periods, my intensity, my range of movement, my time under tension, my tempo. Fucking everything comes into play here, okay? Again, my body's going to adapt to whatever I'm doing. So I need to send the right signal. Then my body's going to adapt to that. If I take strength building exercise and a power building exercise and speed building exercise and endurance-based exercise, and I throw that all into one session, then my body's like literally not going to adapt to all of them. Different training protocols elicit different responses. Some are, and it's going to be specific to what you're doing. Some is going to have a carryover, okay, but others not so much. If I have a power lifter, for example, and they want to build endurance, I need to make sure that the endurance that I'm building is specific to what they're going to be needing it for, what they're going to be using it for. If I look at the force velocity curve, this is kind of how I structure my training depending on what the person needs. So the force velocity curve is strength is at one end. This is the highest part. Okay, so think strength as a 1 rep max deadlift. Then I'm looking at strength speed is next. This is where I'm looking at my Olympic lifts. Okay, so 1 rep max deadlift is all about producing as much force as possible. Then my strength speed work, my Olympic lifts, this is all about producing as much force as possible, but now we're adding an element of speed to it. Okay, in the middle of the force velocity curve, we have power. Okay, this is producing as much force as possible in the shortest amount of time. All right, then we have, so this might be something like a shot put or a javelin throw or something like that. Okay, then I'm looking at my speed strength. This is typically, sprints, jumps, throws, agility-based work. It might be a hill sprint or something like that, where I'm focusing on being fast, but there's also an element of strength. Then at the bottom is velocity or speed. This is all about producing force, turning things on and off really, really fucking quick. Okay, so this is things like your, straight out sprints. All right, so depending on what you're targeting, depending on what you're going for, is going to completely determine all of those different variables, which can get a little bit complicated. But what I'd recommend doing is simply structuring in, deadlifts, lunges, squats, push in horizontal plane and vertical plane. That might be a bench press and an overhead press or a dip. Okay, then a pull, which is going to be horizontal, some form of bent over row, pen lay row, T-bar row, etc. Then a vertical pull, which might be a pull-up or a high pull. And then I'm probably going to throw in some core-based work, okay, some twisting movements where I'm looking at maybe a Palloff press or a side plank. We've got movements, we've got anti-movements, so think about the normal core-based work, ab crunches that people do, okay, and then choose, some anti-movement stuff. It might be a plank in multiple positions, multiple directions, front plank, side plank, contralateral plank. Then you might throw in some kettlebell carries, suitcase carries, farmers carries, and things like that. All right. Pretty dense topic. Unfortunately, I couldn't answer that on an individual basis, but fairly generic. Now, just going back to the force velocity curve for a moment there, a lot of these adaptations are going to be specific to what you're training. However, there will be some carryover. For example, if we start at the top of the force velocity curve, we have force, which is strength. Okay, building strength will then lead into strength speed. So having more strength, a higher 1 rep max deadlift or front squat, for example, is going to allow you to be a little bit faster with your Olympic lifts. Okay, so strength, then strength speed, they're going to have a lot of carryover. Okay, and then strength speed is going to lead into power. Okay, so as we move down the force velocity curve, the weight is going to get lighter and the movement is going to become faster. So underneath power, then we have speed strength. So it's all about being fast, but with an element of strength. Down at the bottom, velocity, which is all about our speed-based work. So if you are going to be going through programming, I'd recommend starting off with some strength work because that is the foundation of every other physical attribute, okay? Once you build the strength, then you can start adding the speed element to it, then the power element, then you become faster with a little bit of an element of strength, and then it's all about max speed-based work. Okay, once you build all of these foundations, then you add the endurance in. Okay, you need to be proficient first at lower reps, at lower numbers, and just practice the skill of movement. Once you get the movement down pat and you've dialed it in, you've mastered the movement. Doesn't matter if you've got 100 kilos on a barbell for a deadlift or 200 kilos on a barbell for a deadlift. Your movement looks exactly the same. Once you get that, then you earn the right to start adding the endurance-based work. So an example of that I like to give in my power-based classes at Tiger Muay Thai, typically on a Thursdays, obviously the gym's closed, but how I like to explain this is, let's say you're standing 50 meters away from a big wall, a big mirror, and I give you 3 balls to throw at the mirror to try and smash it. Okay, I give you 3 balls. The first ball is a bowling ball, then you get a baseball, then you get a ping pong ball. Now you have to throw overhand here. The bowling ball is all about strength. Okay, it's going to be heavy, so the force needed to propel that ball is high, but the velocity or the speed that's going to come out of your hand is low. Okay, this is your strength. On the other side, we've got the ping pong ball. That's going to require high amounts of velocity. It's going to come out of the hand really quickly, but it's not going to have the weight to carry it through to smash that mirror. Okay, that's our speed work or velocity work. Then right in the middle, we have the baseball, which is the perfect weight to be able to produce high amounts of force and have that leave the hand rapidly. Okay, so power is the combination of strength and speed. Okay, it's high amounts of force applied rapidly, and that's going to be the option that you're going to choose to throw that ball and smash that mirror. All right, so training strength is going to have a much higher effect on strength, speed, and power than it is on speed, strength, and speed. Training speed, on the other hand, will have a much higher carryover to the speed, strength work and the power work, but not so much on the strength, speed, and strength. Now, an example of how I use this is when I'm looking at my fighters. If I've got a heavier weight class fighter, they're typically going to be a lot stronger, okay? The goal of any athlete is to make them more powerful with better endurance so that they can apply, large amounts of force. They can be explosive for long periods of time through as the rounds roll on, as the fight rolls on. Okay, so if I've got a higher class athlete who's typically going to be strong, then I'm probably going to need to work a lot more on the speed and the speed strength and the power component. All right, just working on the speed might be enough to increase their power. They've got the strength. Now we just need to teach them how to apply that rapidly. On the other hand, I might have a lighter class athlete who is super fast, okay, but doesn't have the strength to have that knockout power. Okay, might just be, really good at touching people on the face and kind of fucking them up through volume, but they don't have that knockout power. So this is where I start building strength in. So then that gives them a lot more snap. So now they're fast. Now we're adding a little bit more force into their punches. Okay, so completely dependent on the person, completely depends on who you are and what adaptation you're going for. Now, to round out this episode, what I want to say here is training is all about the adaptation that you're going for. If you're training to lose weight, that's like me saying, or you saying, hey, I'm going for a drive in my car, and me saying, where are you going? And you saying, I'm just going to burn some fuel off. Okay, that is not a fucking good way of looking at training. Okay, if you're looking at training to burn fuel, you're doing it wrong. Training should literally be to complement your life or counteract your lifestyle. Okay, it's the other 23 hours of the day outside of the gym. It's your fucking lifestyle. I spoke about this in another episode. It's all about psychological and behavioral change. If you're looking to burn body fat, if you're looking at energy, create an energy imbalance or an energy deficit to lose weight, okay, look at the other 23 hours of the day. That training time should be all about you. You're doing things because you love yourself, you care about yourself, and you want to fucking complement the rest of your life. So again, I apologize for not answering that specific, but it is literally impossible for me to answer that specific to you because I don't know anything about you. I don't know your background, your history, what your goals are, etc. What I would recommend doing though is if you are interested in this stuff, fucking employ a good coach, employ a good trainer that's going to teach you all this shit, these different variables that apply at different times, because you need to use the right tool at the appropriate time to elicit the correct response. Now, it's an investment. If you want to learn this stuff, if you actually want to make changes with your health and fitness, you need to invest the time, energy, and effort into a coach. So then that coach can then invest their time, energy, and effort into you and teach you the shit that you need to know to put these processes in place. One of my favorite quotes is, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. All right, so that brings me to my next point. If you guys are interested, please feel free to shoot me an email at PFT Inquiries. That is PFT ENQUIRIES at gmail.com. I do have an online coaching package, which is 3 months. I don't typically advertise this because it's kind of a side hustle, and I'm using this time to, create content for my podcast and YouTube channel and things like that. And but I'm also happy to help people out and push them in the right direction, give them some programming and nutrition guidance, and focus on the other lifestyle factors as well. So you can shoot me an email for my online coaching options, pftinquiries at gmail.com. All right, that rounds out this session. I only answered 2 questions here, so I'm actually going to follow up this session with another Q&A session. Let's go.
If you enjoy the content that I'm bringing to you guys, please help me spread the message and like, save, share, and subscribe, and pass this off to your friends, your family, anyone that's relevant in your life that it could potentially help. And please make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review. Much love, guys. Peace.